The sea is endless. Its breath rises and falls, carrying secrets older than time. Listen, and it will speak. Waves touch the shore with quiet rhythm, like a heartbeat that never stops. Calm, steady, eternal. In a small, forgotten village, people lived by the tides. Their lives moved as the moon pulled the sea. They did not fight the ocean. They listened. They honored its gifts. They feared its silence more than storms. The children grew up with stories of a hidden wave, a wave that never broke, a wave that stood forever. Some said it was a wall of light. Others whispered it was the breath of Poseidon, frozen in motion. No one had seen it. No one dared to search. Yet the stories lingered, passed from elder to child like fire. On nights when lanterns floated over the water, the sea seemed to listen too. A hush fell over the waves. It was in one such night that a dream began. A dream that would carry across horizons and into legend. The Eternal Wave of Poseidon. A story not of fear, but of wonder. A journey waiting to be told. The shore was quiet. The kind of quiet that does not come from absence, but from deep listening. Waves came and went with gentle rhythm, folding into the sand, pulling back, folding again. The people of the village lived with this rhythm. Their mornings began with tides, their nights with stars. Fishermen rose before dawn. They pushed their boats into waters that knew their names, their fears, their hopes. Mothers gathered shells at low tide. Each shell was a gift, each a fragment of the sea's forgotten songs. Children ran barefoot along the wet sand. Their laughter blended with gull cries, rising like foam on the wind. No walls stood between the village and the ocean. Homes were simple, built from driftwood, stone, and faith. Faith in the sea was unshaken. It was not worship, but respect. A bond like breath, unseen yet constant. When storms gathered far away, the villagers did not curse. They waited. They listened to the sea's warning. The waves spoke through their height, their pace, their weight against the shore. Every crash was a word. The villagers had learned to read these words. A rising tide meant patience. A falling tide meant work. They never questioned the language of the sea. To question was to lose balance, to lose the gift of harmony. The elder of the village, called Mythology, often sat by the rocks at dusk. He spoke little but heard much. His eyes were salt bright, always looking beyond the horizon. He seemed to listen to voices no one else could. Children gathered around him in the evenings. They asked for stories. They asked for truths hidden in waves. And Mythology told them of the silent shore. Not the sand they touched, but a deeper silence within. He said the shore itself was alive. Each grain carried memory of tides older than any living soul. The silence was not emptiness. It was presence, a vast presence that wrapped itself around all who listened. Villagers often paused to feel it. Even the busiest fisherman would stop, close his eyes, and breathe. The silence told them when to sew nets, when to dry sails, when to sing, when to mourn, when to hope. Some travelers once mocked the village, saying silence was nothing but absence of noise. But the villagers smiled. They knew silence was full of voices, whispers, and waves beneath the waves. The silent shore held them close. It shaped their lives. It shaped their dreams. One child, however, listened differently. Not just with ears, not just with heart. He listened with longing. He was called Iason. His gaze lingered where the horizon touched the sky, where silence turned to mystery. He believed the silence was not only memory, but invitation. A door waiting for someone brave enough to open. While others felt content, Iason felt a pull, as if the sea whispered his name with every retreating tide. He kept this secret close, like a pebble hidden in his palm. He feared no one would understand. Myron, though, saw the hunger in his eyes. He said nothing. He only nodded when Iason looked to the sea. The silent shore was more than a place. It was the beginning of a path unseen, a story unspoken. And on that shore, with waves folding endlessly, Iason's journey quietly began. Unnoticed by many, yet written already in the eternal rhythm of the tide. The silent shore had chosen its dreamer. The sea had begun to prepare its voice. And the village, still quiet, did not yet know that silence was about to speak. The night sky shimmered with silver stars. The sea mirrored them, each wave carrying starlight into the dark. Iason walked alone by the water. His steps traced patterns only the tide could understand. The village had gone to rest. Fires dimmed, doors closed. Only the sea remained awake, whispering to him. He felt drawn to a cluster of shells washed ashore, glowing faintly as if touched by unseen hands. Bending down, he lifted one to his ear. The sound was not the usual roar of the sea. It was music, soft, winding, ancient. A melody both strange and familiar, as if remembered in a dream. His heart raced, yet his body calmed. The notes moved like ripples, spreading peace through his very breath. The shell pulsed warmly in his palm, and for a moment, the stars above seemed to sway in rhythm. Iason whispered, "What are you?" The sea responded with another wave, rolling gently as if in answer. The melody lingered. It carried a sense of invitation, like a door unlocking inside his mind. He placed the shell down, but the song did not stop. It stayed with him, echoing from within. For days, the tune followed him. While others fished, worked, or played, he hummed quietly to himself. Villagers noticed but said nothing. They believed children often carried sea songs in their hearts. Yet this one was different. The melody did not fade. Instead, it grew clearer with each rising tide. One evening, Myron called him to sit by the rocks. His voice low, his eyes deep as salt water. "You hear it, don't you?" Myron asked. Iason froze, unsure if he had spoken too loudly in his dreams. "The forgotten song," Myron continued, "comes to those who are chosen. Few listen, fewer understand." Iason nodded slowly. "It feels alive." Myron smiled, weathered lips bending like driftwood in the sun. "Alive, yes, because it is the sea remembering itself. And you are meant to carry that memory forward." The boy's chest tightened, not from fear but from wonder, as if a great horizon had opened within him. Myron placed a hand on his shoulder. "Do not chase it too quickly. The sea reveals itself in time." That night, Iason lay awake. The song was stronger now, weaving through his dreams like threads of light. He dreamt of lanterns drifting into endless water, of waves holding shape without breaking, of a voice unseen. When dawn came, he awoke with the melody still in his breath, humming gently as gulls called overhead. He began to notice more shells along the shore. Each held a fragment of the same tune. He collected them, not as treasures, but as pieces of a whole. The sea seemed to guide his hands. Children laughed, teasing him for carrying shells like secrets. But he only smiled, guarding their hidden voices. The forgotten song became his companion. It was not loud, not demanding. It simply waited to be heard. And in its waiting, Iason felt a promise that the wave beyond the horizon was no longer only legend. It was real, alive, singing, calling him closer, tide by tide, step by step, into its eternal rhythm. The village went on as always, nets thrown, fires lit, stories told. But for Iason, The world had shifted. Every task, every breath, every glance at the sea was now bound to the melody that lived inside him. And though no one else heard it, he knew the song was leading him to a place where silence ends. The forgotten song was not forgotten anymore. It had found its voice again through him, and it would not let go. The tide was gentle that morning. The horizon glowed pale gold, and the air smelled of salt and promise. Iason walked along the shore with a small satchel. Inside lay the shells that sang their hidden melody. He held them close, unsure why the sea had chosen him, yet certain that the voices meant more than chance. Each shell seemed to hum softly when touched, not loud, not clear, but alive, as if whispering in secret. He lifted one to his ear. The song was there again, weaving like a thread through silence, pulling him deeper. This time he heard words, faint and broken, carried as if by currents traveling far below the waves. "Iason," the whisper called. Thin but certain, his heart trembled, for the sea had spoken his name. He stood still, listening. The wind passed, gulls circled, but the voice lingered in the curve of the shell. It was not a command, nor warning. It was an invitation, a beckoning toward something hidden, something vast. He knelt to gather more shells, scattered like breadcrumbs across the sand. Each carried a fragment of song. Together, they formed a chorus, faint but steady, as if the sea itself sought to speak through many mouths. Iason spread them in the sand, arranging them in circles, triangles, shapes he could not explain. The shells seemed to glow faintly in the sunlight, their whispers rising and falling like breaths. Myron watched from a distance. The elder's eyes carried no surprise, only patience, as if he had seen this before. When Iason looked up, Myron walked slowly toward him, his cane pressing deep marks into the sand. "The sea is speaking," Myron said softly, "not to frighten, but to guide. Do you hear its truth?" Iason nodded, though words failed him. He only placed a shell into Myron's hand, letting him listen. Myron closed his eyes. For a long moment, he was still. Then he smiled gently, returning the shell. "Voices of the deep," Myron whispered. "They carry what was once forgotten. They have chosen you to remember." Iason's breath caught. "Why me?" The question hung heavy, filled with both awe and fear. "Because you listen," Myron replied. "Most hear only noise, but you have given silence a place to speak." The shells shimmered as if in agreement, their whispers merging into a rhythm that matched the pulse of the tide. That night, Iason placed the shells around his bed. Their whispers lulled him into a dream beyond dreams. He saw the sea opening, endless and radiant, and within it a wave that rose but never fell. The eternal wave glowed with blue fire, and within its crest a voice deep as thunder, yet gentle as rain. The voice did not frighten him. It welcomed him, wrapping his heart with warmth as vast as the horizon. When he woke, the shells still whispered. The dream had followed him back, refusing to fade. Days passed, and the whispers grew clearer. Villagers began to notice him speaking softly to the shells. Children giggled, calling him listener of stones. But Iason only smiled. He knew they were more than stones. He began to weave the song into his daily tasks, humming while carrying nets, while walking by the tide. The melody became part of him, like breath or heartbeat, inseparable from his every movement. One evening, as lanterns floated again on the water, the whispers grew louder, joining the hum of the waves. Iason stood still, holding the shells, watching as one lantern drifted farther than the rest, glowing brighter. The whispers surged, urging him to follow. The shells vibrated with light, their voices unified in a single call. "Myron," watching quietly, nodded once. The elder understood the sea was leading Iason to the horizon. The whispers of the shells were no longer fragments. They had become a message, a guide, a promise. And Iason, though uncertain, felt ready to follow their song into the unknown. The whisper of shells had spoken, and he had listened. The festival came with the turning of the season. The air carried warmth, and the sea lay calm under moonlight. Villagers gathered along the shore, carrying lanterns shaped from reeds, cloth, and gentle flames inside. The tradition was old. No one remembered its beginning, but all knew it honored the tides and their gift of life. Lanterns were said to carry wishes across the water, where the sea received them and whispered them back. Children laughed as they lit small flames, careful hands protecting each fragile glow from the salt breeze. Mothers hummed low songs, their voices weaving with the rhythm of the tide, soft as the hush of waves. Elders told stories of how the lanterns guided lost sailors home, shining paths over the restless waters. That night, Iason stood among them, clutching his shells, the forgotten song still alive in his heart. He had woven the melody into his wish, though he did not speak it aloud. The sea already knew. As lanterns were lit, the shoreline glowed like a necklace of stars laid gently across the darkened sand. One by one, villagers placed lanterns onto the water. Flames floated steady, mirrors of constellations above. The tide carried them outward, each drifting slowly, glowing with fragile beauty in the endless black sea. Iason knelt and released his lantern. For a moment, its flame flickered, then steadied, bright against the night. He whispered, not knowing why, "Guide me." The word dissolved into the air, carried by wind and wave alike. The lanterns drifted together in a loose constellation. Some faltered, some dimmed, but his burned brighter. It moved differently, sliding between the others as though the sea had chosen its course with intention. The whispers of his shells stirred in his satchel. The song grew stronger, pulsing with the flame's glow. Myron's gaze followed the lantern. The elder said nothing, but his silence carried a weight of recognition. The lantern drifted farther than the rest, the tide pulling it toward the horizon with steady grace. Its light grew brighter, strange and serene, casting a path across the rippling surface of the sea. The villagers gasped softly. Some pointed. Others whispered that the tide itself had claimed a lantern. But Iason felt only stillness, as if the sea had exhaled just for him, opening a door only he could see. The forgotten song hummed in his chest. The shells trembled, voices merging into a single, steady rhythm. The flame on the lantern flickered, but did not fade. Instead, it gleamed blue for a heartbeat, then gold again. It was a sign, subtle yet clear, and his heart knew what words could not capture. He stepped closer to the water, feet sinking into cool sand, as though the tide itself was inviting him forward. Children tugged at his sleeve, asking why his lantern glowed so differently. But he could not answer. All he could do was stare at the distant light, steady and bold, refusing to vanish among the stars. The villagers sang together then, a song of tides and gratitude, their voices rising like waves in unison. Iason's voice joined, but his heart sang the hidden melody, threading it into the chorus of his people. As the last lanterns faded into distance, his still shone, a beacon set apart, chosen by the sea. When dawn came, it was said that one lantern remained visible long after the rest had vanished. Whispers spread through the village that the sea had marked someone, though no name was spoken aloud. Iason knew, though. His steps, his dreams, his song, all pointed toward the light that waited at the horizon. The lantern of tides was no longer a simple offering. It had become a guide. And Iason, carrying the whispers of shells, knew his journey had only just begun. The days after the festival carried a strange stillness. The villagers spoke of fishing and storms, but Iason drifted. His thoughts stayed with the lantern, the one that glowed brighter and drifted farther than all the others. At dawn, he would walk to the edge of the water, his eyes fixed on the horizon as if waiting for an answer. The shells still whispered, soft and steady, weaving the forgotten song through every breath he took. One morning, the sky was clear. The sea stretched wide, and something shimmered at the farthest edge of sight. It was not a cloud, not a wave, but a veil of light, thin and shifting like air turned liquid. Iason blinked, certain his eyes deceived him. But when he looked again, the shimmer remained. His heart raced. He knew the sea was showing him something hidden, something long kept from mortal eyes. The horizon was not empty. It was a door, a secret carried within the endless breath of the tide. He told no one, not even Myron. The vision felt fragile, as if words might shatter its truth. Instead, he listened. Each night, the shells hummed louder, urging him closer to the path unseen. One evening, he followed the tide farther than before, walking until the waves reached his knees. The water was warm, almost guiding, and the horizon shimmered brighter with each step into the surf. For a moment, he thought he heard voices, not whispers now, but a chorus calling from beyond the veil. The sound carried peace, not fear. It wrapped him in calm, steady as the tide itself. He stood there until stars appeared, his body trembling not from cold, but from awe. When he returned to the village, sand clung to his legs, but his mind held the glow of the horizon. Myron met him by the rocks. His gaze was steady, as though he already knew what Iason had seen. "The horizon speaks," Myron said softly. "It does not open for all, only for those who are ready." Iason asked, "What lies beyond?" The elder's eyes drifted seaward, glinting with memory. "Not death, not danger," Myron replied, "but truth, the sea's deepest secret. Few are chosen to glimpse it." That night, Iason lay awake, the glow still alive in his thoughts, brighter than any flame of the village. In dreams, he crossed the horizon. The veil parted, revealing waters that glowed with eternal light. He saw a wave rise and hold, never breaking, standing tall against time, breathing as if alive. When dawn came, he woke with the shells still humming. The dream felt less like fantasy, more like memory. Days passed, and the shimmer returned each morning, always at the same place, waiting for his eyes to find it. He began to hum the forgotten song louder, letting it join the rhythm of the tide as he walked. The villagers noticed his distant gaze, his quiet steps, but said nothing. They sensed he was listening elsewhere. One afternoon, as the sun bent low, the shimmer widened. The horizon glowed as if a hidden world stirred. The shells in his satchel grew warm, their whispers rising together into a single clear note. Iason placed them on the sand, and they pulsed with light, echoing the shimmer far out at sea. For the first time, he felt no fear of the unknown, only wonder, only the pull of a truth waiting to be found. The horizon was not an ending. It was a beginning, a promise drawn in light across endless waters. And deep within, Iason knew. When the time came, he would follow. The horizon's secret had revealed itself, and it waited for him to cross. The days after the festival carried a strange stillness. The villagers spoke of fishing and storms, but Iason drifted. His thoughts stayed with the lantern, the one that glowed brighter and drifted farther than all the others. At dawn, he would walk to the edge of the water, his eyes fixed on the horizon as if waiting for an answer. The shells still whispered, soft and steady, weaving the forgotten song through every breath he took. One morning, the sky was clear, the sea stretched wide, and something shimmered at the farthest edge of sight. It was not a cloud, not a wave, but a veil of light, thin and shifting like air turned liquid. Iason blinked, certain his eyes deceived him. But when he looked again, the shimmer remained. His heart raced. He knew the sea was showing him something hidden, something long kept from mortal eyes. The horizon was not empty. It was a door, a secret carried within the endless breath of the tide. He told no one, not even Myron. The vision felt fragile, as if words might shatter its truth. Instead, he listened. Each night the shells hummed louder, urging him closer to the path unseen. One evening, he followed the tide farther than before, walking until the waves reached his knees. The water was warm, almost guiding, and the horizon shimmered brighter with each step into the surf. For a moment he thought he heard voices, not whispers now, but a chorus calling from beyond the veil. The sound carried peace, not fear. It wrapped him in calm, steady as the tide itself. He stood there until stars appeared, his body trembling not from cold, but from awe. When he returned to the village, sand clung to his legs, but his mind held the glow of the horizon. Myron met him by the rocks. His gaze was steady, as though he already knew what Iason had seen. "The horizon speaks," Myron said softly. "It does not open for all, only for those who are ready." Iason asked, "What lies beyond?" The elder's eyes drifted seaward, glinting with memory. "Not death, not danger," Myron replied, "but truth, the sea's deepest secret. Few are chosen to glimpse it." That night, Iason lay awake, the glow still alive in his thoughts, brighter than any flame of the village. In dreams, he crossed the horizon. The veil parted, revealing waters that glowed with eternal light. He saw a wave rise and hold, never breaking, standing tall against time, breathing as if alive. When dawn came, he woke with the shells still humming. The dream felt less like fantasy, more like memory. Days passed, and the shimmer returned each morning, always at the same place, waiting for his eyes to find it. He began to hum the forgotten song louder, letting it join the rhythm of the tide as he walked. The villagers noticed his distant gaze, his quiet steps, but said nothing. They sensed he was listening elsewhere. One afternoon, as the sun bent low, the shimmer widened. The horizon glowed as if a hidden world stirred. The shells in his satchel grew warm, their whispers rising together into a single clear note. Iason placed them on the sand, and they pulsed with light, echoing the shimmer far out at sea. For the first time, he felt no fear of the unknown, only wonder, only the pull of a truth waiting to be found. The horizon was not an ending. It was a beginning, a promise drawn in light across endless waters. And deep within, Iason knew, when the time came, he would follow. The horizon's secret had revealed itself, and it waited for him to cross. The night was calm. The moon hung heavy, and the horizon shimmered like a thread of glass across the sea. Iason stood barefoot at the edge, the shells in his satchel glowing faintly with the hum of the deep. He had waited for this moment. Yet it came not with thunder, but with silence, patient and absolute. The villagers watched from afar, their torches low, their voices hushed, as if fearing to break the spell. Myron alone stepped closer, his gaze steady, his words soft. "The veil opens once. Do not turn back." Iason nodded, though his heart trembled, and fixed his eyes on the shimmer stretching across the water. With each step into the tide, the waves rose higher, not fierce but warm, lifting him toward the unknown. The shells pulsed, their song louder, weaving with the rhythm of the sea, guiding him toward the horizon. The shimmer grew vast, bending into an arch of light, its glow trembling like a living breath. It was not a storm nor a mirage, but a door carved of water and song, waiting to be crossed. Iason waded deeper, the world behind him fading, the cries of seabirds dissolving into the night. The villagers watched as the glow touched him, wrapping his form in light until he seemed part of it. He felt the veil brush against his skin, neither cold nor warm, but eternal, a fabric of both sky and sea. And then he passed through. The horizon swallowed him whole, and the world shifted. There was no drowning, no falling, only light folding over him, endless as the tide. He opened his eyes to a sea unlike any he had known, glowing with colors unseen, breathing like a dream. Above him arched currents of silver, ribbons of water suspended like constellations across the sky. Beneath him lay coral forests, vast and alive, their branches swaying though no wind stirred. Fish moved in spirals, glowing trails marking words he almost understood, as if the ocean itself was writing. In the distance rose the eternal wave, towering yet unmoving, a crest frozen yet alive with endless power. It did not crash nor fade. It simply stood, breathing, pulsing, a heart made of water and time. The shells trembled in his satchel, their song merging with the wave's hum until they became one voice. That voice spoke not in words, but in feeling, a welcome, a recognition. The call answered at last. Iason felt his body lighter, his fear gone, replaced by awe so deep it silenced thought. The veil had not ended his world. It had widened it, revealing what lay hidden beyond mortal sight. He reached out a hand, and the water itself bent toward him, weaving threads of light around his fingers. He knew then that the sea was not a cage, but a path, and he had crossed into its truest heart. Behind him, the shimmer closed, leaving the village far away, though its song still echoed faintly. Before him stretched eternity, carried by waves that would never break, never die, always breathe. Iason stepped forward, each motion guided not by fear, but by the steady rhythm of the eternal wave. The veil of horizons had opened, and he had chosen to walk through. What waited now was no longer a mystery, but a journey written in tides and song. And Iason, child of the shore, was ready to follow it wherever it would lead. The sea around Iason glowed with living light, each ripple singing as though woven from threads of music. He drifted forward, his breath steady, as though water and air were no longer separate, but the same. The eternal wave rose before him, immense and unmoving, a crest forever held in balance against time. Its glow shimmered with colors unseen, hues that shifted like memories flowing through the body of the sea. Iason stood in awe, his heart echoing the hum, as if the wave had always lived within him. The shells in his satchel blazed brighter than ever, their song now inseparable from the wave's voice. It was not thunder, it was not storm, it was the pulse of eternity, steady, vast, and alive. As he stepped closer, the waters parted gently, forming a path that led him to the wave's base. There, he placed the shells upon the surface, and they floated, glowing like stars upon liquid sky. The hum deepened, and the wave rippled, not breaking, but bending as if it breathed with recognition. A vision unfolded within its light, endless shores, forgotten songs, and the memory of lives carried by tides. Iason saw faces, not of strangers, but of ancestors, their eyes gentle, their voices woven into the wave. They spoke not in words, but in presence, telling him he was part of something that never began nor ended. He reached out a hand, and the water leapt to meet him, cool yet tender like an embrace of the sea. The moment his skin touched the eternal wave, the shells burst into pure light, dissolving into the water. Their song became one with the crest, and Iason felt it surge into his heart, binding him to its rhythm. The wave's voice poured through him, not commanding but sharing, offering knowledge as old as oceans. He saw how every tide was a breath, how every storm was not fury, but renewal, part of the endless cycle. He understood then. The sea was not a force to be feared, nor a mystery to be solved. It was a guardian, a memory keeper, holding the stories of every life that touched its depths. The eternal wave was its heart, never breaking because truth cannot be destroyed. Iason bowed his head, not in worship, but in gratitude, for he was chosen to remember. The sea's hum softened, wrapping him in calm, as if welcoming him home to a place he had always known. The vision faded, but the truth remained, glowing steady within his chest, like a lantern lit inside. He turned back, and though the village was far beyond the veil, he felt its song woven into his own. He knew his people would still cast lanterns, still hum their songs, and their voices would reach this place. For the eternal wave heard all, carried all, and gave all back in rhythms that never ended. Iason stood, no longer just a boy of the shore, but a keeper of tides, a listener of the deep. The sea had not taken him. It had given him what he had always been seeking. The eternal wave shimmered one last time, brighter than dawn, before settling back into endless breath. And Iason, heart bound to its hum, stepped forward into the current of his new path. He was no longer searching. He was part of the song itself. The eternal wave had claimed him, not as possession, but as kin. And in its unbroken crest, he found both beginning and forever. The glow of the eternal wave dimmed into calm, yet its rhythm still pulsed through Iason's heart like a second beat. He drifted away from the crest, not lost, but guided, as though the sea itself carried him where he must go. Around him, the waters shifted, forming arches of coral and tunnels lit by fish that shimmered like lanterns. Each turn revealed more wonders. Gardens of kelp waving like banners, shells the size of boats resting in silence. Iason felt no fear. For every ripple, every flicker of light, moved as if in harmony with his breath. In the stillness of a cavern, he found a stone altar carved by time, etched with spirals like those on his shells. Upon it rested a pearl, vast and radiant, glowing with an inner fire that pulsed like a tide. As he approached, the sea stilled, the fish paused, and even the currents seemed to bow in reverence. The pearl sang, not with voice, but with memory, carrying songs of countless lives touched by the water. Iason reached out, his hand trembling, and when he touched it, light poured into him like an endless wave. Visions surged, storms that gave birth to islands, rivers flowing into seas, lives rising and fading with the tides. He saw his village, lanterns floating, their light reaching far beyond the veil, joining the song of the deep. He understood then. The pearl was no treasure. It was memory itself, a gift of the keeper of tides. The eternal wave had chosen him to carry it, not in hand, but in soul, bound to his spirit forever. The pearl dissolved into light, streaming into his chest, settling deep where his heartbeat met the sea's hum. He staggered, not in pain, but in awe, as the sea welcomed him as one of its voices, a bearer of memory. The coral walls shimmered, their patterns glowing brighter, as if the ocean itself rejoiced in his becoming. From the depths rose a figure, not man nor beast, but shaped of flowing water and endless song. Its eyes glowed like moonlit waves, and its form shifted with every ripple, vast and gentle all at once. It bowed its head, and though it spoke no words, Iason felt the truth. He was now Keeper's kin. The figure reached out, laying a hand of water upon his brow, and the sea's voice became his own. He could hear the whispers of every tide, every current, every drop carrying a story too vast for time. He knew the fish, the corals, the whales. Each sang a note, and together they formed the eternal hymn. The Keeper's gift was not power, it was remembrance, to carry the sea's truth back beyond the veil. For the ocean could not walk the land, but through him, its song would live among his people. Iason bowed in return, his heart steady, carrying the light now rooted within him. The figure dissolved into foam, fading into the eternal wave, leaving him alone, yet never alone. The path ahead brightened, a current forming, beckoning him toward the shimmer of the horizon once more. He swam with ease, guided not by muscle but by song, as though the waters themselves bore him onward. The veil flickered ahead, no longer a barrier, but an open door awaiting his return. Behind him, the eternal wave glowed, eternal and unbroken, holding him in its endless breath. Before him lay the world of men, lanterns, voices, and lives still singing along the shore. Iason knew he carried the Keeper's gift, and with it, a duty, to remind his people of the sea's embrace. The eternal wave had marked him forever, not as captive, but as kin, chosen to remember and to share. He stepped toward the veil, his heart glowing with the hymn of the tides, ready to return as more than he left. The Keeper's gift was his to bear, and it would guide not only him, but all who listened to the sea. The veil shimmered like a curtain of mist and light, rippling as if the sky itself had dipped into the sea. Iason swam closer, the gift of the Keeper glowing faintly within him, steady as the beat of his heart. He paused, hovering at its edge, sensing that once he crossed, the silence of the deep would fade. Behind him, the eternal wave pulsed in calm rhythm, a reminder of what now lived in his spirit. He whispered a silent vow, though words were not needed, for the sea already carried his promise. Then, with a breath as steady as the tide, he stepped forward and let the veil fold around him. The world shifted, light blazed, sound returned, and the weight of air pressed gently upon his skin. He opened his eyes to find himself upon the shore. The village spread before him in quiet wonder. Lanterns floated still, their glow mirrored by the stars above, as if sky and sea spoke in harmony. The villagers had gathered by the water, their faces turned outward, waiting for something unseen. Iason walked forward, the sand firm beneath his feet, his steps echoing with the rhythm of tides. Children gasped, elders raised their hands, and whispers rippled. He had returned from the sea's embrace. He bowed his head, not to prove, not to boast, but to share the truth carried within his chest. The glow of the Keeper's gift flickered faintly through his eyes, steady, kind, and eternal. He raised his hand, and for a moment the sea answered, a soft hum rolling to the shore. No storm, no fury, just calm waves, moving in unison, as if bowing with him to the people. The villagers fell silent, listening, their lanterns drifting farther, carried by the softened tide. Iason spoke then, his voice gentle but resonant, like a current weaving through rocks and sand. The sea remembers us as we remember it. Every song, every lantern, every tide is part of the same hymn. His words carried beyond sound, for the people felt them within, as though the sea whispered along. The elders nodded, their eyes shimmering, knowing the old stories were no longer just tales. Children leaned closer, their hearts alight, sensing that the sea was no longer only mystery, but kin. Iason told them of the eternal wave, not in detail, for some truths live best in silence. He spoke instead of remembrance, of the gift of tides, of how every life touched the song. The villagers placed lanterns gently on the water, watching them drift as if guided by unseen hands. Each flame flickered, glowing brighter than before, as though the sea itself breathed with them. Iason stood among them, not apart, yet changed, his soul bound forever to the keeper's gift. The veil no longer loomed as barrier, but as bridge. Shimmering faintly at the horizon's edge, he knew he could cross again if the sea willed, but his place was now here, among his kin. The village hummed softly, voices blending with the tide, a harmony of land and sea together. In that moment, Iason realized the gift was not his alone. It was for all who listened. He was no prophet, no ruler, but a listener, chosen to remind, to carry the hymn forward. The sea had spoken through him, and now its voice lived among the people as their own. He gazed at the horizon, where lanterns and stars met, and the eternal wave shimmered unseen. Its rhythm pulsed still within him, a steady reminder that beginnings and forever were one. The people turned to him with trust, not in awe, but in kinship, for they too were keepers now. Iason smiled, feeling the tide echo in his chest, carrying him, carrying all, in endless song. The return was not the end of his journey, but the beginning of their shared remembrance. And the keeper's gift, glowing faint within his heart, would guide the village for generations to come. The years passed like tides, steady and unbroken, yet each wave carried a new story to the shore. Iason lived among his people, not as legend, but as kin, guiding them with the rhythm he carried within. The keeper's gift glowed softly in his heart, not a fire to burn, but a lantern to remember. The village thrived by the sea, their songs no longer fearful, but woven with trust in the tides. Lantern festivals became more than ritual. They became dialogue, a way to speak with the ocean itself. Children grew up listening to Iason's voice, hearing the sea's hum in the rise and fall of his words. They learned that the ocean was not a boundary, but a bridge, holding them close like a parent's arms. When storms came, they did not cower, for they knew the sea's fury was also its renewal. They rebuilt, they endured, and they sang, each note carried into the depths by the eternal wave. Iason aged, as all do, his hair touched by silver, but his eyes still shimmered with the tide's glow. He walked often by the shore, lantern in hand, whispering to the water like one speaks to an old friend. And the sea always answered, not in words, but in waves that curved gently at his feet. The villagers followed his ways, each generation learning that they too were keepers of memory. For the eternal wave was not his alone. It lived wherever voices met the tide in song. One evening, as the horizon blazed with sunset, Iason stood at the shore for the final time. He placed a lantern upon the water, watching its flame drift farther, glowing against the twilight. The sea glimmered, the veil shimmered faintly, and the eternal wave pulsed with familiar rhythm. Iason smiled, knowing he had fulfilled his vow, not by conquest, but by remembrance. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply, and felt the hum of the wave rise gently within his chest. And when he opened them again, he was no longer bound by sand, but lifted softly into light. The villagers saw the lanterns flare brighter, their glow stretching far beyond the horizon's line. They felt the sea's embrace, not in sorrow, but in joy. for they knew he had returned home. From that night on, when they sang by the shore, the tide carried back an answering hum. Children would laugh, elders would smile, and they would say, Iason listens still with the wave. The story spread to distant shores, carried by travelers and tides alike, becoming song and legend. Yet in the village, it was never just legend. It was memory, alive in every lantern, every hymn. The eternal wave remained, unseen yet eternal, pulsing through every tide that kissed the earth. And though Iason's form faded, his voice lived on, woven into the ocean's unending breath. Generations rose and fell, but the rhythm endured, as constant as the pull of moon on sea. The people learned to live not apart from the water, but with it, in harmony, in kinship. Every lantern set upon the tide was not farewell, but greeting, a promise of eternal return. The eternal wave carried them all, binding past, present, and future into one endless song. And so the sea and the people walked together, not master and subject, but kin forever. For the eternal wave of Poseidon was never conquest, never demand. It was remembrance. It was the breath of the ocean, the hymn of time, the promise that nothing is ever truly lost. And if you stand at the shore tonight, listening, you may hear it too, the hum within the tide. Close your eyes, breathe deep, and know that the eternal wave still carries every voice. For the sea remembers as we remember it, forever flowing, forever singing, forever home.